I do have one member that's texted me. She'll be here shortly. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think we do have a quorum. Traffic was particularly bad this morning. In fact, the chair coming down was in the toll lanes, which were going slower than the regular lanes. So I got out of the toll lanes on the regular interstate and was able to make it down. It's wild. So we'll get started. Consideration today, we've got before us House Bill 147 by Representative Thomas. I don't know that I see Representative Thomas here. Perfect timing. The gentleman is just, it's Hollywood timing. Hey, come on up.
Just like that.
That's right. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I was talking to one of your constituents this morning on the way down. How are you, sir?
Are you anything I should know about?
Yeah. We're going to talk about 147. Yeah, we just to the point of the question. You know, there's a Senator Albers had a bill that addressed a broadly similar topic. Senate Bill 37. We're not going to, you know, that's Senator Albers asked me about some elements of that being woven into House Bill 147. The posture today of the committee is we're going to have discussion around 147, some different provisions. I've got some specific things I'd like to talk to the author and perhaps members of the committee about. I think Senator Albers is going to come here and talk about some elements of 37 he might like to get woven into 147 before it proceeds forward. I think today the goal is going to be, as a committee, to take some testimony, have some discussion, make a list of notes. I'd like to take some questions and requests from members of the committee. If there's things that committee members like and think, hey, we need to include this, or hey, this needs to come out, I have a problem with this, let's get those on the table now. So this will feel a little more like a first committee / subcommittee meeting, talking through some of these things. My goal is to come out with a list of items from which Representative Thomas can develop a substitute and we can bring back before this committee for action. I just think there's too many issues that are in play. We want to make sure we do no harm with this, but I do think the idea of defining AI and having some clarity about what responsibilities are within state government and perhaps even some consideration of local government is wise to consider. So with that, Chair, I'd like to recognize the author, Representative Thomas. Walk us through 147, your thinking, and you know, I know you can talk this on the fly. So
No.
and if you need a bill in front of you, we'll get you a copy.
If you have a substitute version of the bill, I wasn't exactly sure. Thank you.
This is the version as passed the House that we're working from today, yes. LC 560266.
Well, before we get too much into the language of the bill, because we do know that there's going to be some modifications to this, I think what Senator Evan Attardi calls it improvements, or he has a term for it that always makes me laugh.
Enhancements.
Enhancements. Thank you, Senator Payne. That's exactly what it is. So I think we ought to kind of take a step back real quick and just talk about what the drivers are here. Obviously, artificial intelligence is something that's not going to go away. This is going to be interwoven in our society, and it's only going to become more and more ingrained with what we do every day. Artificial intelligence is trained, so to take it back even a little bit farther, the way that they create these models is they're trained off of available information, and the model does not care what kind of information it's given. It's just trained off of what it has, and that could be very clean data. It could be very biased data. It just knows what it knows. It's kind of like if you think about it, your experiences that make you who you are unique to you, and you can almost say that those experiences, they're the training set which trained you to be the person that you are. I mean, if you want to get out of the genetics versus the environment debate. So with that being said, there's certain times where AI models can be trained on data that can have certain biases injected into it. So I'll tell you all a fun story since while we're waiting for Senator Albers to get here. In the off season, I love tech. I mean, I gotta get, I nerd out on the whole thing, and so I decided I was going to make 2 AI agents, and this was during the AI when we were doing the AI subcommittee, And so I made one agent that was a Republican, and I made one agent that was a Democrat, and I made them debate each other. And then I got kicked off ChatGPT, which is true. However, I'm now back on. We're good. But what's really neat about that is, or scary, depending on how you look at it, is how does an AI model know what a Republican's position would be? How does an AI model know what a Democrat's position would be? That's a bias, right? I mean, we live in a world that has bias in it, and so the fact that I'm watching it. By the way, I gave it probably some of the most partisan bills that you could think of to debate. It was interesting because it was pretty spot on a lot of time. It was couple times I was watching them debate each other, and it was like watching the well. It was really pretty interesting. But that the problem is, with that being said, is since we know that we have systems that have bias in them, and there is ways to root that out. But since we have that, we have a responsibility to put guardrails up, and that's what Senator Setzler, or Chairman Setzler, that's one of the things that we explored during the AI. I know you all did your study committee. We did the subcommittee, and I appreciate the time that we worked together on that. But we decided we have to put these guardrails up, and this is the guardrails to make sure that this technology, if it's being implemented, that it has an ethical standard. Senator Albers and I kind of going at the same thing, just from different directions. I'm definitely amenable to however you all feel like we need to handle that as well. But that was kind of what started this whole thing. So my direction was to have the wait a minute. It was to have the Georgia Technology Authority take lead, set the ethical policy, and then work with local governments to implement that policy. I know that Senator Albers is a little bit different. His is to create a board, an AI board that will basically do kind of the same thing that. The thing is, since the AI board's a little bit more reaching outside of just the executive branch and the governor's office, his belief is it touches more agencies, which that robustness he feels is. Yeah. And I'll let him speak for himself on kind of what direction he wanted to go.
And we're not waiting on him. It's you.
Yeah.
He's going to be here. He's in House Rules. He is going to be welcome to speak later, but I do want to focus on your bill. And I think the thinking is 147 is the bill that came over from the House. I think I'd like to start with that as the starting point.
Yeah.
We're not going to throw out 147 and try to interpose a Senate bill. We're going to 147 is the baseline from which we're working. If there's some things from Senator Albers' bill that are additions or improvements, then we would consider those. That's why I want to give him a chance to share a thing or two in respect to the 8 study committee meetings he had this summer. I did have a couple of questions on your bill I'd like to address with you.
Okay. This is the.
But
Go ahead.
560266 is what we're working from.
560266. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So, having said that, what questions do members of the committee have for the author? Any questions? At this point, I see none from members of the committee. I'll ask a couple.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
I'm just, then I'll recognize some other folks that want to speak. Do we have a sign-up list? Is there anyone?
We do. I don't
do.
I don't have anybody.
Could you
I'll
grab that
hand it
for
to
us?
Mr. Chairman.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Hey, John, how are you, sir?
Join you, sir.
Yep.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Yeah, and Senator Albers, what we said, we're working from House Bill 147. I think the sense of the committee, sense of the chair is, let's talk about scope items. If there's some scope things we want to consider that's in years that might be added, we would consider it maybe as an add-on to 147, sort of in that direction. We do have copies of your bill we can share if there's a couple things we need to reference if it's needed. My question for the author, and again, if there's questions from committee members, just hit your buttons and chime in. again, from LC 560266. Line 20 of that version. This is the provision where the paragraph where it's beginning on December 31st of this year and annually thereafter, an inventory of systems that state agencies are going to use. This does not contemplate locals because agency is defined as a state agency in this, so it would be within that limitation. All systems that I'm reading on line 20, all systems that employ artificial intelligence and are in use by an agency. One thing I think we would consider, and again, in the context of a list of items we might address in a substitute, is between use and by. I thought about adding for beneficial consideration. Beneficial consideration is things the state, in essence, pays for or gets for service. I don't think we need to get into an item that is on someone's phone, personal phone, as an app that they use. We don't need to report ChatGPT is used by some number of our employees. If it's something that's it's an add-on to the Microsoft package that we get, then that Microsoft add-on utility that's bought as part of our Microsoft Office suite, that might be added as something in this list. But unless there's something the state is paying for or employing in a meaningful way, that was my question. Do we have concerns for things the state's not really engaged in contractually being used? And if there is, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
My answer to that would be, I guess you have to think about it, your tech stack, okay? And your tech stack's going to have different components. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're using artificial intelligence that's integrated into the tech stack. Sometimes you're using what they call like an API, where you're actually using an outside LLM, large language model,
Yep.
as your engine, basically, for your vehicle. So, like, they may use ChatGPT. That may be part of the tech stack. So I'd be a little weary about how you define out what that is, just because I'm sorry, we're going to start spreading out here, becoming a little bit more broad. But most production-based AI systems, there's not enough power on your laptop to be able to run something like that. You're going to have to go to use a data center where
Yep.
you rent graphic processing units, be it an NVIDIA unit or whatever, and you use that as to power those engines. For most companies, probably small business, medium-sized business that are engaging with the state, they're not going to have the ability to have their own servers. They'll rent this. They'll either deploy their own LLM, which quite frankly is a lot more complicated and expensive than just paying, a per token fee that you would pay to ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever. So if we're talking about ChatGPT, for example, was say on your phone and you're looking up information, and if it's personal, I don't think you're going to track something that's personal. But
Agreed.
If it's a government account and they're using it to make decisions, I think that there probably should be some guidelines.
Sure,
in it.
right. And I think what I would say too is, let me ask the question differently.
Yeah.
Much is made about the words of the bill. The words of the bill is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
But what we need as a committee is we need crystal clarity on what we're doing. And then the bill writes itself. Mm-hmm. What specific systems are you wanting for us to have an inventory of, and what specific systems are you not wanting us to have an inventory of? Because I think the clarity around that be helpful to the committee. Again, Microsoft Office has this AI utility that's sort of added in. It's
Copilot.
Copilot, correct.
Yeah.
Is Copilot on your list, or are you thinking about something is that below a de minimis level? You're looking for something higher than that? Is Copilot in your inventory? What is an example for the committee of what you mean by your inventory?
So Copilot's a little different, and the reason why it is because it's usually typically deployed internal to organizations. For example, Copilot's a great thing to use if you need to write a function in Excel. That's the typical use case for that. Or say what's called a RAG tool, which is a retrieval augmented generation, where you have a database and the Copilot will go look at your internal database. Maybe for us, that's, you know, the Legis website or whatever. And Copilot will go into that server. But Copilot doesn't typically work outside of the Microsoft framework. Whereas like Anthropic or ChatGPT, they do typically work outside of the Microsoft framework. So my answer to that would be, I would say, if it's making decisions, and that's why I kind of defined it the way I did. And by the way, Ben, I think you can even talk about the amount of time that we spent in trying to create this definition of AI. I think everything is kind of built off of that definition, which is a machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. Artificial intelligence systems use machine-based and human-based inputs to perceive real and virtual environments, abstract such perceptions into models through analysis, blah, 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 blah. And I think that the whole point of that was to keep, because AI has been around for a long time, y'all. You've been using it for a lot longer than I think people realize. If you ever had it like predictive text, or you're typing something in your email and all of a sudden you hit tab and it has the next 6 words, that's AI. Like that is. So the way that we built this was, it was more based off of decision-making ability, right? So if, for example, say you have someone who is going in and asking questions, filling out some paperwork for Department of Labor. And that individual, we want to make sure that AI system isn't in any way biased to that individual in awarding any government government rights that they have. And John, I know you've been wanting to hop in here, but
sure,
be happy to.
I would just add that to Chairman Thomas, everything he said makes perfect sense. But I think we have to look at this. It's not the tool; it's what they're using it for. And when his example of DOL would be one of many. But if you're using any type of tool, whether it be small or large, and you do not have these protocols in place, we have seen good and bad come from that. As an example, some of these will still hallucinate. Hallucinate means, as an example you probably saw with last year, it created a Bible verse to comfort somebody. Well, it actually was never in the Bible. It created and cited a case law that never happened. Now, it's going to continue to get better, and they're going to kind of offset each other, but the goal is as government, I've nicknamed these bills, we eat our own dog food. That if we're not doing it right, how can we expect us to be able to serve the citizens of Georgia for not doing it right either? So it's putting the controls in place of something will be the single biggest thing that's going to happen in our lifetime, bar none. Every other issue we will talk about at this General Assembly in my 15 years of being here will be pale in comparison to what this will be overall. So we want to make sure we start building the foundations and getting this right from the state level, because if done wrong, the negative effects could also set us back, and we can't afford that either.
So the question is, you know, in the thrust of this effort, if we're going to inventory the systems, is it we have a universe of systems, and then are we only going to inventory the systems that are used in a certain way? Or are we going to inventory systems recognizing that anybody in disparate parts of government, if the systems are available to them, may employ them in a meaningful way that we can and can't see? I want to understand with crystal clarity what exactly we're trying to do.
Well, I would just say, outside of AI for a moment, as a state, we have a lot of old legacy systems. We, in audits and other things in the past, have found out that we have a lot of duplicative systems. And it's probably a good idea for us to go through these and clean these up and modernize them anyway. And candidly, we also have a challenge today because everything's separated by different constitutional officers. So we have all sorts of different systems. They're in different areas. They're not talking to each other. And I think, you know, we've worked on some of that over the last couple of years, trying to just connect some of those dots. This needs to be done anyway. AI just adds that much more importance onto it, in my perspective.
Okay. So again, it's Chair, hear the importance thing. That's why we're gathered, and that's why we're here at, you know, early in the morning to get going. I just want to know, what is it the intention to, and I don't know that I have a problem if the answer is, hey, Microsoft Copilot is one of the systems that many people in state government use. It's got, you know, a 35-word description of what it does. and one can see that's okay. It's going to be limited in what it can do, but it's a thing. That's, to me, that's part of the list. If it's not part of the list, then we need to draft a definition to make sure that is not included as part of the list, and we know what is. That's all.
This is maybe a just general philosophical idea, but I tend to lean not about codifying exactly what an AI system should be and shouldn't be, because I promise you I'll sit here this time next year and tell you the 10 new things on the list. I think giving some brevity to whoever we have execute this is probably the better approach. If you want to put some more guardrails up, that's fine. Again, I feel like we've kind of got the general guardrails there, but you can't define something that constantly is evolving, so again, Mr. Chairman, I'm always amenable to however you want to handle this. This is a consensus body, but I would be.
We're in the shall business. If we're saying an agency shall do A and B and C, that means we're not telling them they shall do D and E, what they shall do A, B, and C. I just want to make sure we know what A, B, and C is. We're not saying, because we could pass a resolution that, hey, AI is important, AI is transformative, technology authority, we encourage you to go look into AI and manage it well. We could do that. But if we're going to have a bill that says you shall do this, we just need to know what we're telling them they shall do and what we're not telling them. That's all.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not trying to list systems in this bill. I'm just trying to say the definitions, the clean, straight lines of the definitions of this bill are going to have meanings. And I just want to make sure that even though we know there's some blurriness out there, we at least know what we're asking for. That's all.
No, and I would agree with you. I think we tried to do that the best we could, with lines 12 through 17, to, like I said, to try and put the basic guardrails of what the definition of an AI system is. And one of the recommendations that came out of the study committee that you chaired, Senator Albers, was the fact that we felt very comfortable that this definition was encompassing enough to pick up everything that you're talking about, but not so restrictive that we're going to have to change the definition in 2 years. Again, to your point, I mean, there's always some balance, and like this is a consensus body, so if you feel like there needs to be more balance, we're always open up to that.
No, I'm not saying that. Just want to hear what your thoughts were. Chair recognizes Senator Wicks for a question.
Good morning, and thank you for all the information that you've provided. But one quick question: how much is this going to cost the taxpayers and the state?
Well, I think the GTA and I had already. Cameron, do you want to come up here? We've already answered this question once, but that was last year. So, yeah, here, I'll get up.
We're going to call the GTA anyway here in a minute, so you might as well come on up. Yeah.
Answer that question. Go ahead. Yes, so Cameron Fast, Georgia Technology Authority. Cameron Fast, Georgia Technology Authority. I don't believe there's really any substantial cost for us to compile this inventory. We're already working on that as we speak.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
So we have no concerns with that.
One of your board members said it's coming pretty soon. You guys have got your arms around this, I guess?
Yes, and we also have an AI lab that's going to be launched here in the next week or two. So
Yep.
we're working hard on this.
Okay. So, and again, just as a business model, could you explain to members of the committee your business model of getting, as opposed to being appropriations funded, being sort of funded through user management fees from agencies and such?
Yes, so part of it is through the appropriations through agencies as they purchase services through GTA. There is a fee associated with that. But a bulk of what funds our agency is through our Office of Data Innovations. We have data that's available to the public for purchase. And so that is what funds our operations, but also a lot of these IT projects that the state invests in.
Yeah. Okay. Where would you say you are in your arc of getting this? 147, as you read it, requires an inventory.
Right.
Is the inventory you're pulling together now compliant with what you understand this bill to require?
I think if we're not exactly the same, I think we're close.
Yeah.
Yes, we already have some policies and standards in place from, I believe it was 2023. And so we are already requiring every executive branch agency, if they're using an AI system or tool, that they have to be approved by GTA before using it.
Okay.
So kind of going forward, we have we're monitoring that, but we're also able to inventory what is in use already.
Is that in statute or is that executive order?
No, I mean, the policies and standards are part of our rulemaking for agencies, but it's not in statute.
No, your standard is it $1 million procurement you've got to be part of? Or are there things below that level?
That's separate. So the policy for AI is just that if there's an AI, if an agency wishes to use an AI system or tool, it has to be vetted and approved by GTA prior to its use, implementation.
And that's by executive order. That's not by statute, correct?
That's yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Chair recognizes Senator Payne for a question.
Just for you, Cameron. So my question is, right now, because this is coming so fast, but it's been coming for a while, and so how do you govern? Well, what are the policies that govern this within GTA? That do we need to be aware of those that might help us? Because y'all been doing this for a while now, that we might be able to make sure that we get this. If we're making law, we want to make sure that we're incorporating everything that it could possibly lean to in the end. So that's, I guess, would we be better off if we sat down with GTA and went through policies and made sure that we were doing the right thing?
We're always happy to have those conversations. I mean, we have the policies in place. We are always trying to make sure that, certainly with the use of AI, that there is a human in the loop, that the decision points, there is a human involved, and that this is not just the systems running wild. So I think we have a really good grasp of it, but we're always happy to take input from the General Assembly and from our board and from the private sector. We have so many partners that we work with. So we're very open to making sure that we are doing the best we can with the resources we have.
All right, thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator Islam Parks.
Hi. So it seems like you're more or less already doing this, and this bill is an effort to just be transparent and have good best case practices and letting the public be informed is what I'm understanding.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I clarify that?
Yeah.
And Cameron, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're chartered under everything's under executive agencies of the governor. Do you have authority for the Department of Insurance, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Labor, Ag, all those folks?
That's correct. So we are executive branch minus university system minus constitutional officers. So most of what you consider executive branch, but not all.
So I just want to make sure we're clear on that, because this is an important distinguishment. GTA is here, and we have the rest of government here still. So I think that's what some of the stuff that Chairman Thomas and I are trying to make sure we're looking at the whole picture.
Understood. Thank you.
And Senator Albert's clarifying question. We have more questions for you. Not so fast. We'll see. Appreciate you being here, by the way. So, I know there's some limitations around the Board of Regents around what can be designated. If this is designated for constitutional officers, if it's done in statute, can this be mandated for the constitutional officer positions or not?
Well,
I believe that it can be.
The answer is yes, and adding on to that, I know we'll talk in a few minutes about what Senate Bill 37 was. This would also then include our local governments, because we charter every city, every county, every school system. And think about all the things we do today. They have to submit their comprehensive transportation plans to us. They have to submit water plans. They have to submit all these things to the state, emergency management plans through GEMA, et cetera. Again, knowing this is bigger than everything combined we talked about, that's why we're trying to put something together to make sure we're having a broad spectrum for all of Georgians to know what this is. Again, this has got the propensity to do so much good, but if done inaccurately, we could fall very far behind, and we need to make sure we find a healthy balance. The whole goal that I think Chairman Thomas and I are trying to do is guardrails. Some states have gone way off of regulating even private businesses. We do not believe that's the right thing to do at all. It's just to put responsible guardrails in place, transparency, as Senator Park said, and getting those things together to make sure that we're doing the right thing and people understand it.
Okay.
Please.
And one of the things you also notice about this bill is lines 37. It talks about an annual inventory report, and that's really important to us here in the General Assembly, because it gives us a snapshot of where we are at the moment. I always tell everybody it's kind of like when you get in your car and hit the GPS button. It has to first know where you're at before it can tell you where to go, and this helps us define where we're at, which I felt like even though that my friend over here is doing most of this anyway, the reporting part of it is a function that's not codified that we'd like to see happen. So but thank you, Senator Parks.
Okay. Taking notes here again, as we said, our goal is to kind of walk away with here with any to-do items we need to tackle this. Senator, to Representative Thomas, Senator Albers and I spoke briefly about this yesterday, and my question came up, and this may be parenthetically a question for the Technology Authority. On lines 25 and 26, subparagraph C, it contemplates whether such a system was used independently to make informed materially supported a conclusion or a decision or judgment. One question I had was, what is the de minimis level to which we say, well, that's happening a little bit. Yeah, okay, yeah, maybe we used an application on a phone, or we have this, like in one agency, we have in-house surveyors, and the surveying equipment happens to have some AI component to it that's just one-off. It's so rarely used, it's not even worthy of being on the inventory. Do we have a sense of, I mean, I don't know whether the agency's thought about this, do we have a de minimis level below which we're not looking? It's just, it's small enough, its impact is small enough that it's off the radar screen and that's okay. Do you have a sense of that?
I don't know if we have that level defined, but I do think that as we talk about the inventory, it might be worth looking into whether we're wanting to include the spell check component. Like, at what level, yes, are we saying, yes, that is AI technically, but is that the level at which we're looking to address it? So I can't define that sitting here, but if that was what you're getting at, so that it's going to grow. This is going to be something that's included in all of our systems. But is that the decision making component? Is it the information that can be harmful, or?
Because somebody somewhere is going to make that decision. Someone's going to say, yeah, that's not important enough. Let's not include that. Well, when we're in the shall business, I don't want to get in a place where someone who's really diligent about their job and they were an A student in school says, well, it's an AI system, so we got to include that in inventory. The legislature says by statute we have to. I want to make sure we consider at least a de minimis level below which, okay, don't worry about that, right? So,
if I may,
sure,
Mr. Chairman,
please.
I believe that we worded it this way because it has to do with if it is influencing the decision making of the human on the loop. That's why it's written that way. A spell check isn't going to do that. A formula creator isn't necessarily going to do that. But if you're getting information, say that we're using a RAG system we were talking about earlier. And that system is providing information through semantic search that fits a certain bill of things that you're looking for. Knowing that these systems can hallucinate, although I have to say we've gone a long way in the last year, that would definitely fall under the auspices of what we've done here. But again, anything that doesn't affect the decision-making process, I think that you can kind of use that as a line of demarcation between the two.
Where's the language in your bill that excludes AI that's not used for decision making?
I don't think it's explicitly excluded. I think it's what's inclusive, not explicitly excluded. Because I mean, you would get into the point where you're writing pages of code here in the bill that would. I mean, an ATM machine is a form of AI. I mean, it's almost like it's easier to say what's included than trying to explain everything that's excluded. So that's why we took the approach of if it's a decision-making based process, then this is the one that we feel like needs to qualify.
Which does get back to the question I was going to ask Senator Albers. He had a different definition of AI that he was perhaps wanting us to consider. I say all that to say, in my mind, there's the universe of AI systems is a bigger universe. The inventory or any action around it might be affecting only a subset of that, but AI is going to be bigger than anything we want to necessarily create inventory requirements around. I don't know that we do well to define AI as a subset of AI which makes decisions, the answer is probably to define AI as AI is and then limit government obligations to a subset of things. If we're going to limit it to things that drive decisions, AI is a big list, and we limit the applicability of a bill or a statute to the conditions in which AI affects decisions. That's as we would structure. That's just a consideration.
And Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Almers.
when you do an application rationalization or inventory, which is what the state needs to do currently in all their areas, I know GTA is probably a little further ahead of this, is here's every system we have. And these are put in systems. There's tools out there called LeanIX, et cetera, that do this type of work. One of the markers, imagine a big Excel spreadsheet, basically. It says, is this using AI? The answer is yes or no. Is this using it for decision making? Yes or no. It's just a part of the whole application inventory. Then you can click a button and say, okay, here are the ones we really need to focus on because they're doing that, and that's where we would put process, procedures, transparency into place. It really is, I think, more simple than what we might be describing to you.
So what you're saying is these off-the-shelf, commercial off-the-shelf applications like Copilot or an AI utility that's part of Excel, that would be listed in the inventory, but the management actions obviously would be tied around decision-driving systems.
Absolutely.
But your goal would be that all these things that are AI-enabled would be in the inventory from your perspective.
Exactly, and I think I'm going to follow up on what Chairman Thomas said earlier. The reason why you want to leave that open is Copilot does this today. Copilot's plans are to do this by next year.
Right.
And at that point, it will be making decisions, and we're going to need to make sure that we're looking at that accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. What questions do we have from members of the committee? Seeing none, Mr. Fash, stay close.
Thanks, Cameron.
Appreciate that. I want to do this. Appreciate Representative Thomas's presentation. My questions on your bill were addressed. What I want to do, Senator Albers asked me if we could, as a committee, some elements of 37, as we're looking towards considering some tweaks to 147. Senator Albers has asked me about some elements of 37 being incorporated in that. I'm going to let Senator Albers, while Representative Thomas is still with us, present some elements that they think are important for consideration of the committee. As we're passing that out, I will say one thing that we may want to add parenthetically to your bill is 50-25-4. That's the powers and responsibilities of the GTA. There's a list of 32 items the GTA is charged with. We might want to, even though I think implicitly as a software system, GTA has taken this on, we might want to enumerate number 33 being AI and stated as such. I don't know that it's stated clearly in their enabling legislation. That's a small cleanup thing that may be helpful for clarity to make sure it defines their responsibility to take this on outside the general responsibility for software and systems. But having said that, does everybody have a copy of Senate Bill 37 LC 590049? Okay. This is the bill that Senator Albers wrote. This largely comes from the substantial study committee work done this summer and fall. This was not acted on by the Senate, but I think there's some elements of this that Senator Albers thinks, as 147 is perfected by this committee and moves through the process, ought to be considered. So with that as an intro, Senator Albers, you have the floor, and if you could talk through 37, kind of what it does, similar, what it does differently than 147, and what components of 37 you think we ought to consider in our action on 147.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think these bills are actually very much complementary of each other. There was a sub we passed that had a very minor change that I will talk about that went through when it was going through the original committee but didn't get out in time. This was, again, as you mentioned, work with the AI study committee we did, also worked obviously with our friends at GTA, TAG, Technology Association of Georgia. We also worked with ACCG and GMA because this will affect our local governments as well. So this is called the AI Accountability Act. And this is an opportunity for us to first and foremost, we define AI, which Chairman Thomas and I have worked on back and forth. I'm fine with his definition. I think we're pretty close. And then
Real
it
quick,
would,
pause.
Yes.
You do think Chairman Thomas's definition is the one to choose?
Actually,
No.
No, John, you're correct. The thing is this version of the bill had the way we define artificial intelligence. The one that you have in your bill is actually the one that we settled on.
Oh, that's
in the
what I thought.
committee.
Okay, all right, good.
But,
All right.
but because there's another bill that uses this definition, there's some crossed wires there.
So the
So-
Senate Bill 37 definition is the one you would prefer?
This is the standard definition now across the United States. The
Okay.
one that's in Senate Bill 37. Yeah.
Thank you.
So this creates a board, a state board. Now, I want you to think today, we get in the Senate on our desk, usually a couple times a year, all the boards that the governor's making appointments, and we as the Senate then confirm those appointments. There's a board of public safety. There is a board for transportation, and hundreds of boards, literally, that we have that help guide the state. Most of their jobs are very specific to provide counsel, wisdom, and advice to the governor, to the legislature, et cetera. Again, knowing this is the biggest thing that's going to happen in our lifetime, I believe, bar none, I think we need to create one that will go across the entire Georgia government and then also guide our state and local governments. Again, mentioning GTA, I think you're doing some great work. Kudos to Shanzia and Cameron and all the team over there, but they only have that one part of governors' executive agencies. They do not have all the other statewide elected officials, board of regents, things of that nature, and they don't govern anything for state and local governments. So the goal is create this board of very impressive, very intelligent people. We've got some of the best and brightest right here in Georgia to help provide that guidance. This doesn't cost us money. They're not going to have some authority in order to put their thumb on people, et cetera. It's really to help provide guidance to us to say, we as a state of Georgia believe this is so important that we want to have a good guiding body there. Now, a question could be, well, why don't we just use the GTA board? Very qualified, great people. They're looking at technology in general, everything we're doing. This is looking solely at artificial intelligence, which is in itself touches every single thing that we're going to do as government. So that's the first thing, is a simple creation of the board. Really no cost. It's more of a, this is how we're going to move forward. The next thing it does is it has all our levels of government, state and local, create a plan for how they're going to use it and publish that. And they're going to get help from our friends at GTA. They'll put templates out there for how to use it. And if they want to, they'll be able to publish it on their website. They don't have to do anything different. The goal is to help especially our smaller, more rural areas that don't have that capacity to do that. But for those larger ones that are already ahead of this, all they have to do is simply publish this on their own website themselves. To show, again, the transparency, the accountability of what they're doing with artificial intelligence. I think this is going to be the right method. You're seeing companies already do this on their own, by the way, but we as government ought to be leading the way of how we're going to use this in a responsible way. We've been talking about this terminology that I do want to review for everybody. It's called AI in the loop, AI on the loop, and AI out of the loop. So I want you to imagine just a circle, and the dot right in the middle is a human being. That's AI in the loop. Everything that's happening is being directed and guided by a human being. That's where we have been for many, many years. I mean, AI has been around for 50 years. The difference now is it can learn and teach itself. Now we're going to that same circle, but now your dot's actually on the circle. Now I'm on the loop. It's doing a lot of stuff, but I'm watching it. And the last part is there's that circle and your dot's way over here. You're out of the loop. It's doing everything by itself. That's the part that should concern everybody. Because when there's no human there, that's when we all think of crazy movies that we watched years ago, or we see decisions being made and things happening that could cause material harm to people. So the goal for this is to make sure that we've got the practices, procedures in place to say we're going to be in or on the loop pretty much for the foreseeable future. And again, I think it just sets the right precedence for what we're going to do. And also talks about making sure we have the basic data privacy put in place as well. And of course, we passed Senate Bill 111 out of the Senate, which is over in my friend's House committee that he serves on, and we'll hopefully get that pushed forward as well. So that's just a quick overview of Senate Bill 37. If you want to make some comments, Chairman Thomas.
I think the big issue is, and you hit on this, we really can't have AI policy in the state of Georgia without some data privacy guidelines as well. As a matter of fact, I'd almost go so far as to say that data privacy piece is it's probably the single most important thing we really need to tackle out of the gate. And being that is because the information that's entered in through an AI system, depending on how this tech stack is built, that data can be fed into these large language models and becomes part of that model. And if we don't have some type of guidelines of saying, personal information, personal identifying information, if it gets put in these models, it very well could get trained into that model in the next iteration. And that's the importance of why we need to have these general guidelines. And I think one thing that Senator Albers and I agree on many things, but one of the big ones is that we're feeding these AI systems beyond what just the GTA touches. And that's why when Senator Albers and I discussed broadening the scope of this bill, right now I was amenable to the idea and am amenable to the idea. But we got to be really careful about what data you put into these LLMs, because they're once it's out there forever.
And if I could share an example of how there's a gap right now in a little bit of reality of how tools are used. I use about 5 or 6 different ones regularly just to check and play them off of each other. And I've used this example twice that I want to share with you. The first one is I had a group of people come to me last year that was trying to convince me that the death penalty was not a good thing and we should do life imprisonment. So I listened to all their facts, statistics, etc. And then I went on all 5 sites and I put in, what's your opinion on the death penalty? Well, several of them came back and said, well, I can't give you an opinion. That's not my job, but here are pros and cons that I've researched. But one said, the death penalty is terrible. It's horrible, and gave me all the reasons why I should be against it. It opined off of what it wanted me to know as opposed to what the facts were in either case. Doesn't matter whether you're for the death penalty or against it. The system shouldn't be taking a biased opinion on that one way or the other. The other one is I did it for myself. I said, tell me about State Senator John Albers. And it told me all about this guy who got elected in 2015 in Illinois. And I was a state representative before that. All the committees I didn't sit on and the family that I did not have there. It was 100% inaccurate. So I asked it where it got its information from, and it couldn't tell me. So I corrected it. And now it's gospel there. But anybody could have went in and corrected it. So if you think about, that's a little scary, right? And we need to make sure that we're doing this in a right way. It doesn't matter whether we're doing it at a state agency or we're doing it at a local level. Again, we always have to remember that we believe in local control, very important, but we charter every city, every county, every school system, and we already work with them to submit all those plans we talked about anyway, and knowing this is so much bigger.
And Senator Albers.
Was the representative in Illinois, was he more handsome than you, or is he?
Undoubtedly.
His hair wasn't
taller,
as nice.
thinner.
One of the other important points about putting this ethics policy together is local governments are really excited about this. This is a game changer for them. Think about how many times that applicant has to go, let's just say, to get a zoning permit, or a construction permit. And it goes through their agency, and they look at it and they reject it because they didn't have all the paperwork. I mean, this is a prime example where AI can be a great. Not only does it reduce the amount of man hours required by the local government, but it also provides value to the system because the AI can look at the paperwork and say, you know what, you don't have everything you need this, this, and this, and give them direction. So local government's really excited about this, but they're begging for some guidelines to just know, how do I stay in between the rails, which I think is the appropriate place for the state to step in and provide them with that. Another perfect case in point would be like, say, the Department of Labor, and I'm sorry I've used them more than once today. But if, say, you have somebody who's applying for unemployment benefits, and the AI can help them get their paperwork together, but you don't want the AI making the decision on whether they are eligible for those benefits or not. And that's where the in the loop and on the loop and out of the loop comes into play. So,
Chair recognizes Senator Payne for a question.
Yeah, I had I had the thought going through my mind when we were sitting there discussing this, and a lot of times we all will send our contact information to someone on our phone. We'll just open up our personal contact, but then when we go to send it, we select, there's some people I just send it like it is, and there's some people I'm going to limit what, I'm putting out there. And that's what a lot of this is, to give people control that AI just doesn't go crazy. So it's just sending everything that's out there to everybody. And and so how do we do that?
That's a great use case. Thank you. I think everybody can understand that because we've all shared contacts. Following up on Chairman Thomas's point about using our friends at Labor for a moment, we all went through the pandemic, and they were so backed up and so problematic. It was a train wreck for a couple of years. Could you imagine if we had a good system and AI running, how much better we could have served people during that time by making sure their information was accurate, things were put in, it was checking whether they had federal stuff versus state stuff coming in, how long once the extensions were put in place, communicating back to those people what was happening because they were getting no communication back to them. All could have been done with AI, even knowing the actual person making the final decision would have had to review each one of those, just like you said, before we said, okay, this one is clear, this one is clear. But it could have done 90% of the administrative work, and we could have served people so much better. And now we're still cleaning up from those things because we had folks get stuff they didn't even ask for.
Thank you.
I'm going to poll our members of the committee. We've talked about a couple of these things. One of the things that Senator Albers framed was, and Representative Thomas framed was, AI's use within state agencies, constitutional agencies, and then within local governments. I'm going to just poll our members of the committee because I want to kind of be a catalyst for some discussion. What duty do we have as a legislature, in your thoughts, based on what we've discussed, to mandate on local governments certain procedures or disclosure? I mean, there's mandates, then there's just a requirement to disclose. What's the right balance with state government and then local governments in a bill framework? Because again, Representative Thomas's bill focuses on state. Senator Albers' bill recognizes that many of the entities that are affecting people every day using AI will be local governments. I spoke to one of the mayors, perhaps the most dynamic 37-year-old mayor in the state of Georgia, one of your mayors on the way down here, about how AI is being used in his city. And he says in their parking garage, they have an AI app that has the potential to do three things, two of which they use. They use the AI that says if there's a gunshot, it calls the cops. If there's the sound of broken glass, it calls the cops. But they opt to not use the facial recognition technology because they don't want to do facial recognition. They just think as a privacy perspective, even though the technology can do it, they just think it's an affront to human dignity to be facially profiling people. So they choose to turn that off. That's their decision.
Yeah, well, and I would say that if I find that out, Mayor Caldwell, I will be coming to talk to you. but
it's an anonymous mayor we're talking about here.
Yeah. I don't think anybody. It's not that best kept secret.
But
to that actually, you hit on something really important, Chairman. There are cities that are using that third leg here, and that's not maybe in the purview of this conversation, but that's concerning to me. I believe that individual rights, and I believe that people have a law-abiding citizen has a right to walk around in a public area without having their face scanned and their biometric data stored by the municipality or local government or state government for that matter. Again, that's not something that we're talking about in this particular bill. It's, I think, more of a data privacy issue, but it's definitely something that we need to address as we're moving forward in this policy-making process.
So I frame that for members of the committee. If we're going to push down to local governments requirements, whether it's to do things or requirements just for disclosure and say, hey, City of Kennesaw, here's the citizens, here's the things the City of Kennesaw uses that's AI empowered. There's a range of what we would even do with locals. Where's the committee on the issue of the scope? Should this bill address state agencies? Should we touch locals, seeing as how most of the AI functions will be at the local level? But again, it is a different step for us to take that step from state to local. What are the thoughts? We're not going to act on this today. I'm just trying to get feedback from the committee, because as we come back with a sub, I want to have a sense of the committee before we do that. Chair recognizes Senator Eccles.
So, appreciate all the time. Clearly, this is way over my pay grade. Until we start talking about the local government part of it, and I do think, historically, I'm not for growing government at all, or implementing mandates on school boards or city councils or anything like that. But ultimately, this is a taxpayer and a consumer protection bill, really. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And I think that in the end game, the long run, they're going to be appreciative of us doing this. And y'all keep mentioning the guardrails. So, I think it's a good thing for local governments, personally.
Chair recognizes Senator Islam Parks.
No, I think it's a good thing for everyone to implement. I just wonder, at the state level, it seems like this would not be some type of unfunded mandate, but at the local level, it seems like it should be pretty easy to put together without cost. I just don't want it to be seen as like the state levying a cost, something that would cost the local governments.
That's a great question, and that's why our good friends at the Georgia Technology Authority will help to provide them templates and things of that nature. For a very small city, as an example, maybe in South Georgia, their uses will be a lot less than someone else's. And the good news is as people continue to move things to the cloud and other areas that are going to leverage these tools even more, then they'll be able to literally, do a little bit of copy, cut, and paste in some of this stuff in order to keep their inventory together, because a lot of municipalities use the same type of tools and can share with one another in the same vein.
Okay. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may. I also wanted to say one more thing about that getting kicked off ChatGPT. It was to be fair, I did talk with them about it. It was during election season, and they didn't want the technology being used for election related purposes. So that I did want to clarify that, to be fair to ChatGPT. So that was just a clarifying statement. Outside of that, I appreciate y'all having this hearing today and talking with us about this, exploring this idea.
Super. Anything, Senator Albers, you want with respect to the Senate Bill 37 scope and elements?
I would just want to make
Like
sure that
Rebel?
I get you the right substitute, because we did work with ACCG, GMA, and the Technology Association of Georgia and all those folks to specifically put in here that the local government didn't have to put it on their website if they didn't want to, that they could put it on the one that GTA is going to create, because they're going to help them do that. So we didn't add, I think, getting back to Senators on Parks' comment, adding anything to that, we will provide that for them. So we're really trying to roll out the red carpet in order to help and guide them in this process. But I will get you a copy of that.
Okay. And I think we're clear that your definition is the Senate Bill 37 definition is the one we'd like to include in 147.
That is actually the same definition that we include in HB 171, which is going to the judiciary in your SB 9, I believe. Yes. So that would make it consistent across all of the different bills that were.
What is in 171?
That's it's the bill that you and I discussed when you were in judiciary last year, the child obscenities, AI generated child obscenities
Indeed.
bill.
Yeah, we definitely need consistent definitions.
Yeah, so it makes everything consistent across the board. So I would defer to the Senate Bill 37 on that definition.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your presentation because we're running low on time, but
Yeah.
we've got, I don't know that we're scheduled out completely. Is there anybody here representing any organization or anybody from the public that's here that wants to be heard that didn't, based on what you heard today, wants to be heard as part of the hearing? Anybody? By the back? Nobody? GTA, last chance, anything? Cameron? You're good? All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for being with us today. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to take the input we got today. We're going to work on a sub to 147 in conjunction with Representative Thomas. I know Senator Albers has input from from his work in study committee, and we'll circulate a sub for you guys to take a look at, and I would anticipate action at our next meeting.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
With that, we stand adjourned.